Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cranked and Ranked, the podcast where we rank rock and metal and other music-related shit. As usual, it is me, Steven, a.k.a. Old Head, leading the charge into the musical fray. And with me, as always, is the lovely Mr. Eddie Sparxx. Hello, sir.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not going to fuck around today because I have a feeling this might be a long one because we are going to be talking about a band where we're going to do the entire discography today, but it's a discography that I feel like there's a lot to talk about. We're going to be ranking the studio, I guess, albums and EPs, a couple EPs from Soundgarden, which that now makes us 3 bands into the quote-unquote big 4 of grunge.
Hell yeah.
Because we did Nirvana, and we did we? Yeah, we did Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
Man, that seems like a while ago. Both of those seem like they're like a year ago. Man, we're coming up on a year here.
I think we've spaced them out pretty well because, like, we started with Nirvana, and then about halfway into where we're at now was the Alice in Chains one. So I think we've done a pretty good job keeping it varied. Varied over here on the show.
But and I would argue that while Nirvana probably has the biggest like umbrella over like the influence, like everybody knows Nirvana. Like fucking like I believe it was last night on Saturday Night Live, Kid Cudi wore like an outfit to give an homage to Kurt Cobain, and he's a hip hop artist.
Found a lot of hip hop artists seem to be Nirvana influenced these days.
That seems like a thing. But that being said, I feel like if you're going to talk about a band musically as the one that everybody looks to and says that was the shit, I think that Soundgarden is that band. Yeah. Because if you put Nirvana next to Soundgarden is a way better band, just technically and songwriting wise, like all sorts of shit. Like I love Nirvana; they're one of my favorite bands ever. But Soundgarden they're in a league of their own. They were in a league of their own, unfortunately. And so it's been interesting to go through and really re-listen to these albums in the respect of figuring out where they go in a ranking, because as usual it's really tough for me to find that middle ground between personal favorites and ones where I feel like as an album it's good and where that would fall. So as usual, let's talk about where we came in on the Soundgarden story. So for me, Soundgarden, I'm pretty sure I saw the video for Hands All Over. It was probably the first Soundgarden I ever heard, and I liked it, but I wasn't quite into it. The video that made me a fan of Soundgarden was Outshined. Once I saw Outshined, that was the end of it, and I've been a Soundgarden fan ever since. Which that was that was 1991. Which is weird because that was an album that was a little bit buried by another album called Nevermind. But eventually, once you played Nevermind 500 times, you're just kind of like, what's that? What else is out there? Soundgarden, and then you're like, why wasn't I fucking listening to this anyway? but yeah, that was my beginning of Soundgarden. How about you?
GTA San Andreas.
I was literally going to say it before you.
yeah. This is one of those beautiful Radio X bands from GTA San Andreas.
So you hadn't heard them prior to that? Because I feel like they're such a big band, especially songs like Black Hole Sun. You had to have already heard that prior to GTA.
bearing in mind, I was very young when I was playing the GTA.
Oh,
so
okay, that makes sense then.
You're talking.
You shouldn't have been playing, is what you're saying. You were too young for it. Too young to be slapping bitches and shooting people.
Picking up prostitutes in your banged up old car and then beating them up till you get your money back.
Is Eddie Sparxx gonna have to choke a bitch?
Only if she wants me to. But GTA San Andreas, awesome soundtrack across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I consider it to be something of a G-Funk Bible for my generation as well, because they do tend to have extremely well curated radio stations as per the vibe of each kind of area. And but yeah, because it took place in 92, there was a grunge station, and Rusty Cage was the song.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, in a car chase listening to that, it's pretty fun. But yeah, that's where I heard.
Those are songs like Rusty Cage, and we'll get to that later, but that's a song that I wish that I could hear for the first time again. Because I just remember once you get to the end with that breakdown, like once that, like I remember as a young person hearing that and being like, whoa, because that's like one of the earliest examples I can think of where a song like slowed down like that. Because it happens a lot now, but I think that's the first time I ever heard that happen, where all of a sudden there's a slower part of a song that feels completely disconnected, but absolutely perfect for a song. And I loved it and love it today.
The best part about the breakdown at the end of it is because I'd imagine for like time constraints within the disc or something, because you're talking about a game from like 2004 at this point, which is in terms of consoles and stuff. I mean, that's 17 years ago now. They actually, like, some of the songs were shortened. So the breakdown isn't on the GTA San Andreas version. So when it ends at the end of da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, gonna break my rusty cage and run, bound that, and then like it goes Radio X. But
that is a crime right there.
But the best part is that I did kind of get to hear it for the first time again, in a way, because. With the absence of the breakdown, I thought that was a cool song. Then when I heard it with the breakdown, I thought this just got even better. Yeah, this fucking rules. But yeah,
and as does a lot of their stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So we're actually doing a total of 7 albums because we're including the Screaming Life /FOP. Where they took two early EPs and put them together. So we're just counting that as an album. And so we're doing their 6 full-length albums and that ranking from least great to most great, because there is nothing bad. There's literally like like some of these things, even though I do have some criticisms about a couple of them, it didn't feel right putting anything at last place with this band.
Yeah. There's no shit Soundgarden.
No,
it's all
absolutely
badass.
Not.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's jump into it, and let's let Eddie start off with his number 7 Soundgarden album.
Well, on that note as well of like including the EPs as well.
Yeah.
This is a band that has a shit ton of B-sides.
Yeah.
And so many of them fucking rule. So that Echo of Miles compilation is definitely worth checking out, especially the big one with like everything on it.
Does it have? Yeah, because you got like songs like Birth Ritual that are just fucking insanely good. And there's another one that I'll wait till later to talk about. But it's like one of my favorites, and it's not on an album.
You could make like 2 whole extra Soundgarden albums that kick ass out of like the B-sides. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But Soundgarden is a band that, from observations of other people's lists, I think I'm going to have a few hot takes. Cool. So, not that other people.
I might as well. I don't really know.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see where this goes. So I feel like my last place is coming in a little bit hot, but at the same time also maybe not. So I'm just gonna jump in.
Okay.
Number 7, Down on the Upside.
Okay.
This album is still growing on me to this day. It's also a long one at 16 songs, which can be intimidating, and over an hour long as well.
And it's the last one they put out in '96 before they originally broke up.
Yeah. It's another casualty of the mid-90s CD era long album pandemic.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
It has a noticeably, it's got much less emphasis on the heavy side of their sound, with the exception of maybe a couple tracks.
Mm-hmm.
The Soundgarden sound is still there, but it's nowhere near as, Black Sabbathy. It's more on the like alternative kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll jump into the track by track. Pretty
Cool.
Noose is a groovy, catchy one. Great mid-90s chorus on it. Excellent opening song.
I'll interrupt you immediately. In my opinion, with Down on the Upside, if the whole album was as good as Pretty Noose, I think my opinion of it would be way different.
Yeah.
But that song, just because as soon as I heard the name, I had to talk about it. There are, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before in other episodes. Sometimes there are little weird, odd things that are snuck into songs that make the song for me. And in this song, when it's got they're playing the riff during the verse, and it does that like that part. Like every time I hear it, I go, "That is so fucking great." And it's like, and it literally the rest of the song to me becomes better because of this weird little thing that they just throw in the verse that doesn't even need to be there.
Yeah,
and that's why Soundgarden are great, because they do things like that in their songs. Anyway, continue.
For sure. Rhinosaur is Soundgarden straight up doing much more the kind of post-grunge sound at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This was 2 years after 94, which is kind of where grunge tends to drop off after this point, and it kind of becomes more alternative, and then the nu metal thing kicks in.
I think by this point, everybody was tired of being labeled. Like, a lot of bands were just sick of like, well, why do we have to play this kind of music? Why can't we just do what comes naturally to us? And I think that's what Soundgarden was doing.
Yeah, it's you get Zero Chance. This one fakes me out at the start because I legit thought it was Eddie Vedder for like a split second because it has such a strong Pearl Jam vibe. Like this song, I could easily hear being played by Pearl Jam. Easily. Great song.
Which oddly enough, the drummer ends up being the drummer of Pearl Jam after this.
Yeah.
Matt Cameron, that's his name, Matt Cameron. I don't know. I'm so bad with names. It's just like a name that I've said 100,000 times in my life. I'll just immediately be like, what was that dude's name that played drums in Soundgarden? Matt Cameron.
Isn't it insane, though, like, the career that guy's had? Like, he's been a prominent, drummer in not only one, but two of the biggest bands from a scene,
It would be impressive if Dave Grohl didn't exist. Dave Grohl went on from being the drummer of one iconic band to being the front man in another like huge rock band. So it's
I suppose.
that's about as impressive as it gets to me. Not that I'm not a very big Foo Fighters fan, but I look at that and I go, man, that dude. He's gonna. I mean, on his deathbed, he's probably gonna be like, "It's pretty good, man. Let's see you guys later. Peace out."
Hell yeah. Dusty, it's got a nice feel. It reminds me that this is me once again, my kind of generation finding it. Mm-hmm. Dusty reminds me of a level in a Looney Tunes game from a PS2 Looney Tunes game called Taz Wanted. And it's where, like, he gets captured and put in a zoo and he escapes and he has to destroy all of these, like, elaborately placed wanted posters in, like, levels and stuff, but they're, like, kind of puzzles and shit. But, like, the music in it, like the there's a very similar kind of guitar riff that's like the music to one of the levels. So I'll have to go back and re-listen to it and explain what it is. But
they were playing that game before they wrote this song. They ripped it off. They didn't even know it.
Oh man, like you get Ty Cobb. You see Ty Cobb, they suddenly come out of the gate with like this crazy punky one with like this almost rockabilly redneck feel at times.
It feels like on almost every album there's at least one song where they feel like they just got to get the fast out of them. Like, we have to do a fast one. Like they needed to do it. So, and this is one of them.
You know, now that you mentioned that, I think that's true. I think there is at least one ridiculously speedy, punky one on each album.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true.
Comparatively, yeah, it does. Well, that's the thing is that Soundgarden, every single album they ever put out has a great variety of songs.
Oh,
like,
yeah, for
you
sure.
don't get the same kind of thing over and over again. You may get things that sound similar to what they've done before, especially when you're getting to Down on the Upside. But overall, like as an album, you're not really hit with the same thing two times.
Yeah. Like, here's the thing as well. Like you said about Pretty Noose. Blow Up the Outside World.
Yeah.
Again, awesome song. No questions asked there.
It's an epic song. Like it's big. Like the whole thing about it is huge.
And then you get Burden in My Hand, which is again another awesome song. The singles from this album are extremely good. I just feel like the album is a bit long for the fact that they've kind of shed a lot of the heaviness.
Yeah, we're not even halfway through yet.
Yeah. Like, where is it? Never Named is this crazier, punked out track again. Apple Bite is a weird ass vibe. There's a lot of vibe centric stuff going on this album, and I would think I would like it more. I think this is why it's taking so long to grow on me, but I do appreciate, like, they took it in a different direction, and that's brave.
Mm.
But like I had a little bit of a fangirl moment when Never the Machine Forever came on, because I was like, yes, Kim Thayil fucking doing the fucking heavy thing. Hell yeah. Like I was loving that one. Tighter and tighter.
I feel like he is a pretty underrated guitar player.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I realize that he's not as immediately recognized. Like he's not a dude that you can look at and go, oh, he clearly rules at guitar, because there's plenty of those people that and they show off and you can tell. But he's a dude that he reminds me a lot of like an Alex Lifeson from Rush, where he's doing things. He's doing really interesting things, and he's a really great guitar player, but almost does it in an everyman kind of way. Like he doesn't, he's not showing off or trying to let everybody know how great he is. He just has these incredibly cool ideas, and he's like, to me, like as much as the other dudes in the band are great, like Cornell and Kim Thayil, I can never pronounce his name correctly. Thayil. Yeah. Those are the two key components of Soundgarden. Like you have to have those two guys in the band. Anyway, keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, it's almost like he's got "fuck you" talent, where it's kind of like, yeah, I can shred, but I'm not fucking going to. I'm gonna do this like crazy dissonant yet pentatonic shred over here, and you're gonna fucking sit here and love it because I'm Kim Thayil, you know?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. No Attention is a punky heavy one.
Yeah, it's another. We got two of those on this album.
Yeah. Where is it? Switch Opens. See, that's the thing I say about like it not being very heavy. The heavy parts on this album do tend to feel a little more punky than they do on the metal kind of thing.
I think using the word heavy on this album is stretching it a little bit.
Yeah.
There are slightly louder songs, I guess.
Yeah.
There's not really a heaviness anywhere.
Yeah, I think Never the Machine Forever is like the exception to that, but everything else is pretty light by comparison. Switch Opens, cool dreamlike thing. Overfloater, one of like another vibey one, but it's quite bluesy. and unkind. Speedy Grunger, I've put. Boot Camp is the final vibey closing track. This album isn't terrible by any means, but in my opinion, could have kept me more invested if it was shorter, as a lot of it has like a more vibe kind of approach. I like vibe, but compared to Superunknown that preceded it, the parts aren't as memorable throughout compared to the previous album.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but that's not my number 7. I actually struggled with what should be my number 7, and then finally, just last night, I just went, you know what? I unfortunately, it is kind of a duh kind of position for this album, but my number 7 is going to have to be King Animal, the most recent and last Soundgarden album from 2012, which was the album they got back together, and then they put out this album, and it was their first in 16 years when it came out. Yeah. And it was a big deal when it happened because I'm a big Soundgarden fan, and all I remember was maybe it was a year prior to this album where they started gigging again as a band, and I just saw somebody's camcorder footage. Who says camcorder anymore? Video footage. That's how old I am. And I just remember seeing it and being like, oh, they sound so good. They came right back, and it's like it's the next day, and they sound great. And then when this album came out, I went to the record store on the day it came out to buy it, popped it in my car CD player on the way. I bought the CD, and I was immediately underwhelmed by the first track on it, which has Been Away for Too Long. It's not a really good album opener. I guess compared, if you're talking about a song that's got some energy to it, it is a good opener, but it doesn't sound like a Soundgarden song. Even the riff sounds like a riff that somebody else wrote. Like that doesn't so my wanting Soundgarden, immediately I go, oh. Also how on the nose is it for your first song to be Been Away for Too Long? I'm like, I get it. But they immediately make up for it with Non-State Actor. Like that song kicks in, and I'm just remember be like, oh, there's fucking Soundgarden. And that song fucking rules. So even though I have this album last, it's still really good. I would say it's far from amazing when it comes to a Soundgarden album, but it's a respectable return. And honestly, if we are comparing this album to other bands, this kills most bands. But it as a Soundgarden album, it's lacking a lot of the things that I'm looking for. But the thing that's become very apparent, and it was pretty apparent in 2012, but it definitely is now, when you hear Soundgarden, because Soundgarden, even in the songs that I don't like as much, they still manage to fit in those quote-unquote Soundgarden moments that make it their song. And you hear that and you go, without Soundgarden, there is a void. There is a musical void in the world that literally no other band can fill. Like, how many bands can you say that about them? That once they're gone, there is going to be a void forever. Like, I can't, bands could try, and some bands have, but no band sounds like Soundgarden and did it as well as Soundgarden did. So that alone makes this album enjoyable, because it's another Soundgarden album. And really, like, there's a lot of moments that just remind you of how unique they were as a band. But to me, aside from Non-State Actor, to me, the standout track on this album is Bones of Birds. But it's more of it's a mellowish song. It kind of fits more in with Superunknown than anything earlier than that. But it's just so well written. Every single part of that song, I'm just like, this is so great. And it reminds me of, like, not only how great of a band they were, but how they could take a song that has, if you strip things away from it, it has odd little elements here and there, but it sounds your brain could just, oh, this is like a pop song because it's real, it's got catchy moments and it's real, it feels good, but it's not, it's almost deceptive the way that they put these songs together. And I think it's fucking great. But moments like that, unfortunately, there's not enough of them on King Animal. There's a number of just okay songs. And honestly, after listening to it again recently, I don't think it's aged very well. Like a lot of their older stuff still sounds very unique to me. This album, it might have something to do with the production. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't sound. And I'll say this about my number 6 also. It something's not there. It's like all of the Soundgarden elements are there, but it's almost like there's one extra one that's needed that seems to be missing, and I don't know what that is. But overall, I like it. And honestly, one of the kind of oddest songs on the album, which is called Rowing, which ends the album, I think that's fucking great, only because it's so odd in a way that only Soundgarden could pull off. And it's the way the song unfolds, it's so just like, who would have thought of this song? They would have. And the fact that it closes out the album with this kind of weird but powerful song, I'm just like, that's fucking great. So I mean, in the end, it's a good album. But yeah, if looking at everything that they did, that this is definitely the one that if somebody's gonna put all of the Soundgarden albums in front of me and say, which one do you want to listen to? I'm probably not going to pick King Animal just because there's so much other amazing shit. So it had to end up being here at the end, unfortunately, as my number 7.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think this transitions pretty well because my number 6 is King Animal.
Nice.
Right. So King Animal.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Been Away Too Long. I will agree it is pretty on the nose, but I do like it as an opener. I gotta say, it does have that high energy to it, and it does open it up. Non-State Actor has got some tasty riffage going on, by Crooked Steps,
and it's got that odd time signature thing.
Because
I love how the riff is definitely, it's a cool riff played in 4/4, but then once you get to the verse, all of a sudden the beat switches up, like Matt Cameron does some sort of weird fill, and all of a sudden the timing goes. Or maybe the timing doesn't even change, and maybe it's just Matt Cameron being a genius. I don't fucking know, but I just love how they'll throw in those little things where you're just like, did the timing of the song just totally change? And so it's fucking cool. Sorry, go ahead. I keep interrupting you.
I agree though. It's like for some reason it's almost like they don't even realize that they're playing in like odd time signatures. They just do what they do because Soundgarden is just. It's just this machine that works flawlessly.
It's almost like they're not held by normal song conventions. They're like, well, here's what we want to play. So we have to tune our guitars in a really bizarre way and do a really odd time signature. But that's what we need for this song, so let's just do it. Like they're not doing it to be weird. It's just like that services the song they're trying to make, which is why they're so great. All right, keep going.
Their guitar techs must have hated them. Like,
this song.
Like, can you imagine like all of the different tunings they use live? Like, the guitar techs must be shitting
There's
themselves.
A standard. There's a drop D. There's a drop C.
Yeah. Did you put the D in the C section? Shit, we got to get out there.
Yeah.
But like by Crooked Steps. It's got one of those cool like odd riffs again that just works. 1,000 Days Before, this has like kind of a twangy yet dreamy feel to it. Blood on the Valley Floor, heavy Sabbath tinged one.
That riff stays in my head all the time. Like for some reason that just sticks in my head all the time.
Yeah, it's like I think perhaps when you were saying it hasn't aged perhaps as well as the others, I think that could be due to I've noticed a lot of Soundgarden influence in a lot of modern hard rock bands. Like a lot of them sound like they listened to Superunknown and they were like, "Oh, I really liked that." So
Yeah.
like they all kind of had the same idea where it was like, "Oh, okay. Right, we're all going to have this flavor, but we're not going to do Soundgarden."
None of them
Yeah.
bothered to go any further back into their catalog, though, because they're just
Yeah.
like, no,
It's all we need.
this is fine. This is fine.
Oh, where was I? Like I was saying, Bones of Birds. That's a really cool song. It's really mysterious as well.
Yeah.
Tari, slow burner but cool. Attrition is like an up tempo rocker. Black Saturday has this cool classic rock edge to it. It felt kind of 70s to me at times. Halfway There is a softer song. It's nice. I like it. Worst Dreams.
That just sounds like a Cornell solo song to me. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
really sound like Soundgarden, but whatever.
What was it? Worst Dreams. It kind of indulges in some weird sonic choices, some cool stuff. Eyelids Mouth, awesome bluesy rundown riffs in this one. And then Rowing is just this big ass, weird, epic closing track.
Yeah.
And it still deeply saddens me that Chris Cornell, who was and still is my favorite vocalist of all time, is no longer with us. And even 4 years after he passed away, he's still
Has it
left.
been 4 years? Holy shit.
Yeah, but he left this incredible legacy and kicked ass his whole life. It's just hearing this album, it kind of feels. I mean, I know he did a few things after this, obviously, but it does feel like a bit of a swan song looking at this album in context to now. Because like there was such a time gap between Down on the Upside and this one, and it's almost like they came back for one more, and then, I've said my piece. I'm going to hang out with Cliff and Dime. You know?
It's bittersweet, I guess, because it does, for a Soundgarden fan, it does give their story a better ending. Even though it's my least favorite Soundgarden album, prior to that, like you just heard that they didn't get along and they broke up. And if that was the end of the story, then that's just not. Yeah, it's a bummer. So at least we know that in the end they came back together, and we get this nice little button on the end of everything.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my number 6 with King Animal.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna leapfrog over you back to where you were before, because my number 6 is Down on the Upside.
Okay, thank God. I feel like I needed some backup with that one.
These two were switched for a little bit. Down on the Upside was last, and King Animal was number 6. But I think probably the things that made this album all of a sudden jump up a spot were just Pretty Noose and Blow Up the Outside World. Like the fact that those two songs are on here, I'm just like, yeah, those are classic fucking songs to me. And so so this was the last of the original run, as we talked about before. Once again, this is a progression for Soundgarden. Not necessarily in the direction that I would like them to go. I remember when this album came out, it was a little bit of a letdown because I thought that they could do way better than this. But overall, like this is one, the opposite of King Animal. I think I like this album more now than I did then. I think it has aged a lot better. I guess because now like we in hindsight, where they're going as a band. But this is definitely less heavy and a more direct Soundgarden sound. There's still the little things that I talked about earlier in the songs and the odd tunings, odd time signatures, odd little songwriting things here and there, but there's less of them. It's way more pared down to the, meat and potatoes Soundgarden. but there's still a lot of cool moments. But really, this just isn't an album that really excites me. There's a high percentage of songs that I would just call pretty good for Soundgarden songs.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know if this is because of because we've already lived through them breaking up. But when I listen to it, I feel like they're a band that isn't really feeling it overall anymore. It feels like that in the songwriting and in the performances. While they're still good and still leagues above anybody else making albums. Well, not anybody else. We just did 1996, and this one wasn't in my top 5. But but like when it comes to bands, I think that they were still insanely respectable at this point. I mean, they've never not been. But it just doesn't feel as good, even with the highlights. Now, the one thing that I gotta say that I think may be I don't know, controversial. It may go against the grain a little bit. I think "Burden in My Hand" is one of the worst Soundgarden songs.
Oh wow!
It doesn't connect the way. It's literally like a 4 or 5. It's a 5-minute song that all the way through is almost great. Like it feels like this could be a little bit better. This part could be a little bit better. Everything about it is very exhausting to listen to for me because I'm pulling for Soundgarden. I want them to make another, especially following Blow Up the Outside World, which fucking knocks it out of the park. This one is just, everything about it feels like it just isn't quite good enough. And so it makes me not like it because I would rather them just write a song that I go, this one isn't that great, than this song that feels like it should be great and it doesn't quite get there.
It's a bit of a tease.
Yeah, I guess so. But honestly, there are several songs on this album that make me feel that way. Like, oh man, if they had just made some different choices, this could have been fucking great. But you know what? I mean, I'm not the songwriter or in the band, so I'm sure maybe "Burden in My Hand" is exactly what they wanted it to be. And I'm on the other end as the person taking in the music. But it just I hate it. I hate it so much because I hear it and I go, this isn't good enough. This is, and you heard it on the radio so much when I was younger, and I'm like, why this one? Why is this the one that they're playing all the time?
I think as well, there was a thing, I think it was kind of similar to the Jim Martin situation with Faith No More. I think Cornell wanted to push for a little bit of a lighter sound, whereas Kim Thayil, this is something I've heard from another podcast. It was like I think it's the grunge podcast. They did Down on the Upside, and while they're listening to it, they're kind of praising it and stuff. And they said they were kind of at odds in the band with like how heavy they wanted to be, and I think Kim wanted to get heavier or at least maintain the heaviness, but it didn't really include him in that, so I think he felt a bit put out, and that's why the band. I mean, there were tensions. Obviously, the band broke up. So
there's a funny thing that it made me laugh when I thought it in my head. I was like, you know what? On Superunknown and on Down on the Upside, I can hear that Chris Cornell has short hair.
Like
it's like you can hear that he cut his hair off, and it's just like that. Why is that a thing? That's so weird.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I know
because your hair shouldn't matter, folks. Your hair should not matter.
That's the thing. We're not shallow here. We're not shallow on this show, but there is a distinct shift. Right from, like, the thing is, the vibe on Superunknown, which we'll get to, the moment Chris turns up with the short spiked up hair instead of those long flowing locks, singing Black Hole Sun, right? It's not even a subconscious thing. That's a short hair dude song, you know? Whereas you listen to Outshine.
The short hair era of Soundgarden.
Yeah, it's weird. Did they all have short hair? Kim's always had long hair.
I don't think Kim ever cut his hair short. He's the man.
Yeah.
Don't. I mean, I cut my hair short in my 20s too, folks. We all make mistakes.
Did you actually?
But
Oh shit.
I did. I had short hair. I had short hair from around the time I was, I think, 19 until probably about 10 years, till my late 20s. I had short hair, but it was mostly, God, don't even get me started on hair. I hate my hair so much that the only way I ever like it is long. So I had to go through a decade of like, do I shave my head? Do I go get a haircut? Because I get a haircut. It's like every man haircut just looks like a little boy haircut, no matter what kind of hair you got.
Yeah.
So it's like the only option I had was to shave my head. So I had like a buzzed head for a really long time. But then I grew it back out again. I'm like, well, why the fuck did I ever cut it short? It's because it wasn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, if I had the choice, because I was in the Air Cadets from the ages of 13 to 16, and it was kind of more of a thing that I did because my parents wanted me to do it. I would have much rather have been playing in bands, although I did get to fly a plane a couple times and operate an assault rifle. So, you know,
nice.
There's a back and forth here. I just wish I got to do that more frequently, considering the amount of time I had to keep my hair short. You know, I'm just saying there's like a balance here that's not happening. But yeah, although I will say I looked like a fucking dweeb with short hair, like the biggest nerd I have ever seen. Like, and I didn't even have contact lenses at the time. So there was just this nerdy kid walking around in an Ugly Kid Joe t-shirt, but with like fucking computer monitors on his face and like just like a kind of puffy crew cut. And like, honestly, looking at old photos of myself, I would pick on myself. I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, you're a target, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how that's like it shouldn't be an important thing, but to somebody like me it is, to the point where like somebody will like listen to this new band. I'm like, they sound pretty good, but let me go check out their hair.
It's so strange, isn't it? How like you look at a band photo and you can kind of like gauge their vibe from like the hair they've got.
I just feel like not having long hair makes me feel like you're not really committed to this music. Yeah. At any time you could become a pop band because you're already ready for it. And so I don't know.
I'm with you. I'm with you every step of the way on that.
You got to have at least one long-haired dude in your band. One long-haired dude at least if you're going to do heavy music. That's the rule that I just made up.
It's a rule.
Anyway, so back to Down on the Upside. I'm with you that it's too long. The album's too long. They could have cut a whole bunch of songs, but that's a 90s thing. But in the end of the day, I'll wrap it up. The problem is there's not enough really memorable tracks on here. The album's not bad. It's just not good enough. And like we say with many bands, I feel like at this point, I draw a line and everything from here on out like is just fucking amazing. And that's why with Down on the Upside, I hear it and I go, yeah, unfortunately, when you do the kind of albums that Soundgarden did prior to this just falls flat.
Yeah.
And even with the really fucking strong songs. And honestly, I feel like Down on the Upside is an album that Chris Cornell fans really like. Like, I think there are people that are Soundgarden fans mostly, and then there are people that are Chris Cornell fans, and they're into like everything he did. And I feel like this is an album that would be higher up on their list. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Because, like, you know, obviously Chris Cornell's solo stuff has a different vibe to Soundgarden. So, like, this one, this kind of meets in the middle, doesn't it? It's kind of one of those middle ground albums that pleases everyone.
So, yeah, I could see how this would be higher up on some people's list, but not on ours. So, let's move on now. Now we're on to the top 5, right?
Yeah. Welcome to the controversial zone.
Welcome to the jungle.
I think now, you know how I said, "Oh, thank God." I'm gonna need some backing up here. Yeah, from at least.
Okay, I mean, I may not be able, depending on what you're putting here, I may not be able to back you up at all. This may end our relationship forever. You guys may be hearing the ending of Cranked and Ranked right here in the Soundgarden episode. So let's
cue the emotional piano music.
just a tone that play. Just, like what is it? What is that show? The Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with the tone they play, waiting for somebody to. All right. Let's do it. What's your number 5 Soundgarden album?
Okay. Short hair dude album, Superunknown.
Okay.
At number 5.
I don't have a problem with this, but that is a bold choice to put it this far down.
It is a hot take, and I'm now that we're in the top 5 zone, let me just say, I'm just gonna make my case here. Everything here on in, I love. So that's what I was saying. So we're it doesn't matter where they fall at this point, because we're talking about amazing music at this point. Yeah. Though I do have my preferences, so I'm gonna jump in.
Yes.
Cool.
Don't we all?
So this album also took a while to grow on me, seeing as it's a major jump towards much more of a modern production style in the sonic qualities of this album compared to their previous records. But I'll be damned if this ain't full of excellent music at the same time.
Yep.
And actually, no, I did put a note. Also, rip Chris Cornell's hunk long hair during this era. I forgot I put that. But yeah, okay. So
Also he started wearing shirts. I'm like, what the fuck is that all about, Chris?
Yeah. So it's just like, stop covering up the big dick energy because it's not cool anymore. You were a fucking rock star.
Yeah. I guess it was a little bit of a rebellion against that, which I could understand.
Yeah, in a way that's cool, but he could have kept the hair. He just tie it back, dude.
he got it back later on.
He did. He redeemed himself. But yeah, it's Let Me Drown, excellent groovy opener. My Wave is the ideal blend of weird and catchy. This is one of those weird tuning songs, isn't it? Where like all of the songs are like, all of the strings are either E and B. Is it? It's one of those.
I've never really looked into the tuning, but anytime I have, I've always been really surprised at like how many odd choices they just for one particular song, tuning a guitar in a really weird way.
It's weird. It kind of makes me really interested in their process. It's like, do they just tune in a weird way and play around with chords, or do they hear something a certain way and they have to figure out how to play it?
I'm willing to bet it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, you'll play something and you'll hear a note going along with it that isn't there. And then you just tune your guitar appropriately to make that note work with what you're wanting to play. And I feel like part of it was that. But then other parts were probably, somebody somewhere heard a song in a particular tuning and they went, "Oh, let's fuck around with that tuning." And then they wrote a song with it,
Fair. Yeah, it's just one of those cool elements that just makes you think, well, this band really went the extra mile, because so many bands would say, "Oh, we're doing an album in E flat. Look how edgy we are," and then you've got Soundgarden over here doing shit like ZQ4 Batman symbol shit going on.
And then there's me that I'm still using drop D. I'm like, well, I don't care. I'm gonna write something new. It's always in drop D because I'm lazy.
Oh man, but like, Fell on Black Days, great song. Love this one. It's a slow burner, but I love it so much. Mailman, it has a juicy ass heavy groove to it.
There's still some heaviness on this record for sure.
Yeah, like they've definitely gone towards more of a polished sound, but it's still super heavy at points. Superunknown is a cool, upbeat, vibey song. Head Down is really cool. Some unusual sonic choices. Black Hole Sun is an anthem of Generation X. Like, it really is.
You heard that song a lot.
Yeah.
Like back in the day when it was on MTV, it was inescapable. It was like it was one of those things that was around the time that was right before Headbangers Ball ended in America. And they did this thing called Countdown to the Ball, where it was the top 10 rock and or metal songs. But it eventually just became rock because no metal was in the top 10.
Yeah.
So you would always see Jeremy by Pearl Jam, and then later on, this song. And it got to the point where it was just like, I mean, not only is it playing here in Headbangers Ball, but also all day long in the rest of the programming on MTV. It was that fucking big.
I love the video to Black Hole Sun. Like, I'm consistently entertained every time I watch it. But, like, I remember the first time I saw it, I had to kind of check myself to think, what was in this fucking milkshake I just drank, the first time I saw it. I was like, because, like, some of the effects happening in it are, like, really early CGI, but for some reason they also strangely look real at times, and it's like, is anyone else seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
I need an adult. Spoon Man, I'm gonna put my hands down and say one of the greatest riffs of all time. Like,
which was the first video they released from this album. So and I think that was right before the album came out. What the single was Spoon Man, and it's just such a odd song, but also very catchy at the same time.
Yeah.
So I love that song.
It totally makes sense for Soundgarden though, because it's in a weird time signature. It's heavy. It's catchy as shit. And for some reason, they just decided, hey, let's write a song called Spoon Man, and let's have it be about a guy that plays the spoons, and the dude plays the spoons in the song, and it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Limo Wreck is one of the most underrated Soundgarden songs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm with you here, man.
Like hearing him, and the wreck of you is a wreck of you. Like that.
Yeah, it's that's Chris Cornell being an utter badass. And just vocally, I mean, that's one of the, like, I'd probably put that in like, top 5 Cornell like vocal performances, because I know a lot of people will go to like Birth Ritual because he hits these really high notes, but Limo Wreck, for some reason, it's just
the power behind it.
Power, like pure class from Cornell in that song.
Yeah. Dare I Tried to Live. Like, there's so many anthemic, like, Generation X jams.
That is a riff that I always play on when I pick up a guitar. And there's nothing really special about it, but the fact that they came up with that, how it keeps going down and down.
Yeah.
Just like, for some reason, I'm always just like, that's so genius, but also not that genius, because it doesn't, it's not like super hard to play or anything, but it's like, it just gives the song such a fucking huge epic quality.
It's like they take a prog approach to a punk vibe, and like,
ooh, I like that.
They end up with these like ridiculously complicated but almost primal at the same time kind of things going on. It's like we said, it's just this instinct that they have as this unit that just knows exactly what needs to go where, no matter how weird it is or how many times it does or doesn't repeat.
Yeah, totally.
Fucking Kickstand, it's punky hard rocker. This one has some like GNR flavor at points, a few like Guns N' Roses ish moments. Nothing that veers off into that full on Guns N' Roses zone, but there's a few moments that made me think I could hear Axl ranting over this.
Something that we haven't really pointed out that is, I think, a really interesting thing about this band is that they're one of the, I mean, not few, but they're one of those bands where the drummer wrote some music. Yeah. Like Matt Cameron wrote the music for Kickstand, and he's written other things as well. And so there's that part where like they were such a great collection of musicians that even the drummer had songs. Yeah. And that's fucking cool.
Yeah. Oh man, like looking at these now, seeing as this album has had so much time with me at this point, I know I've put it low on the list that's solely based on how much I love everything above it. But my God, like the strength of some of this stuff. Fresh Tendrils, cool vibey one. 4th of July is heavy as balls. Like that's I would not feel out of place calling this grunge doom, you know. That song is pure sludge. Half is this cool vibey soundscape thing going on.
I don't know why that's on the album, but okay.
Yeah, it's weird, but I kind of like it at the same time. And then you get Like Suicide. I'm sensing strong Led Zeppelin vibes on this track. And finally, I know it's a bonus track on later pressings, but I thought I'd mention it because it's a quirky thing I do. I'm not like other girls.
I'm gonna bail you out because it was on the original vinyl pressing.
Was it on the She Likes Surprises? I was gonna jump into.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a weirdly happy but jerky feel to it, and like the burner, like all of those little weird things going on.
Yeah.
But it in the same way that, you know, I know we've mentioned this before, but in the same way that Easy will close out certain pressings of Angel Dust, this one, it has that. It's gonna be okay. You're good now. You listen to the album. Great job, guy. You know.
Yeah.
It has that
I prefer
vibe
it
to
ending. I prefer it ending with Like Suicide, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I just like someone to hug me at the end. You know.
Yeah. So the reason why I know that was on the original vinyl pressing. This is one of the things from my past that I wish that I still had. Is that one of my friends won a colored vinyl pressing of this album when it came out. So back in 96 or 4. And they just gave it to me. Like, cause they didn't have a record player and they weren't really that into the album. And they gave it to me and I had it for years. And then I had a friend who was probably the biggest Soundgarden fan I'd ever met.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, for his birthday one year, I went, I don't ever play this. Would you like this colored vinyl? And he was just, yeah. So I gave it to my friend. So I feel good that I gave it to somebody who's a bigger Soundgarden fan than me.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, God damn it. Now it's like trying to get an original vinyl version of this album. Forget about it.
Well, you're talking
not going to happen.
You're talking 94 as well. So, like, vinyl was in danger at this time. Like,
once you get into 92 through the 90s, they pressed if they pressed any on vinyl, they pressed so few that you're like, oh look, there's a vinyl version. Oh, it's only $400 on Discogs, and that's what this. So I feel that's the one thing that I'm like, man, I wish I still had that. But you know, I'm hoping that he held on to it because you know I'd feel stupid then.
He for sure did. If he's like the biggest Soundgarden nerd there is.
Yeah, he was way into Soundgarden.
And if that's like an original, not only an original, but a special original pressing, like that's some cool shit to own. It's probably worth a fucking fortune as well.
I'm sure it is. But anyway, so that you wrapped up for Superunknown?
That is my number 5, Superunknown.
All right, moving on then to my number 5, which is not Superunknown. Like Eddie said, we're into unfuckwithable territory, in my opinion, starting now. But I had to put this one at number 5 just because it's not really an album. I had to put Screaming Life /Fop here at number 5, which this version, the 2 EPs together, came out in 1990, but it collects the Screaming Life EP from 87 and the Fop. I guess it's an EP, but it's only like 4 tracks or whatever, right? From 1988. So I'll kind of split this up by talking about each of the EPs. So Screaming Life is their debut EP. And the thing that I love about Screaming Life is that from the first moment of music, you're already listening to an amazing band. Like it's immediate. And Chris Cornell immediately stands out as a vocalist. And you listen to this and you're like, yeah, it's inevitable that this band was going to be huge because they, right out of the gate, were fucking great. And the Screaming Life EP is it's got like a real bare bones kind of recording production style to it, but it's really effective for what it is. And it's really good for a first EP. It is kind of primitive Soundgarden, but the sound of Soundgarden is already there. Like they're already a very unique band. Now, something that I never really thought about before until I went through and listened to their discography all the way through for this podcast, because I haven't listened to them first album all the way to last album ever. I've just heard the albums. Early on, for the first handful of albums, Soundgarden didn't really like writing choruses.
Yeah.
Like most of the time, there's not a discernible shift. You know, like a chorus has a part, it elevates the song to a different point or whatever it is. They don't really do that very much. And it's almost like the mood and the groove and the vibe, whatever riff is happening, all of that shit is more important than writing a conventional song from EP number 1. Like they were already just like, we don't need to do things the way everybody else does things because we're fucking better than that. And you hear that on Screaming Life. Now, on the other hand, with FOP, this is not one that I ever really want to listen to because FOP is a cover song by the Ohio Players, and then there's a remix of FOP, which is like, okay. And then there's one original Soundgarden song, which is a good song but not a great song, and then there's a Green River cover. It's almost like just, okay, well, this is fine, but it doesn't, to me, it doesn't, even the production on it, I don't think is that great, and it's not something I want to go listen to when it comes to Soundgarden. But when you put them all together in this, it's kind of cool because you get to hear the beginning of this awesome band and, how it all started. And so just based on the strength of Screaming Life alone, like this is at number 5. But I think all together, out of the 5 we're going to talk about, this is the one that I'll go to the least, just because you already know that there's so much more that this band is going to offer. And so that's why it's here at number 5.
Fair enough. I think we've got another one of those episodes where it's just running nicely into the next, because my number 4 is Screaming Life /FOP.
Awesome.
Cool. So I love this as a collection. I love this collection as like a whole album in that kind of context, because I've never known either of them outside one another. I've always listened to it right the way through, like with the exception of the maybe skipping the FOP remix every now and again, but mainly because it's like, okay, it's like an extension of about 6 minutes onto a song I've already listened to.
Yeah.
But I like it from time to time, hearing all like the cool warped late 80s remix shit going on. But Hunted Down right out of the gate, like that's one of my favorite Soundgarden songs, just simply how rough it sounds, but how it feels like kind of a mission statement where it's like, this isn't like metal, but it's heavy and it's sludgy and it's doomy, but it's also punky. Like, what's going on here?
I mean, that sounds like the definition of grunge to me.
Yeah, that song, like, that's a grunge mission statement right there. Entering has this killer vibe. Love this song too. Tears to Forget is this wild punky one with the trademark odd time signature style they would become known for. Nothing to Say is really doomy, and I love how crushingly heavy it is at points. Dun, 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 nothing. Dun, 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 dun. Like that there is. Oh, every time I hear that one, it's like hell yeah.
Yeah.
Little Joe. This is a cool psychedelic trip meets a weird rapping type thing, and I love how unapologetically weird it is. Like Chris Cornell rapping like a really high pitched and that like boom like all of the choices on this are already so bold and out there, but they're so cohesive. Hand of God feels really, really grungy. So far, the grungiest in my opinion. Although, Sub Pop Rock City, full on wild punk song, and I love the phone call
I forgot
skit.
that's on the newer version of that, because that's not on either one of those EPs.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of like it's a wild, punky song, and I love the skit in the middle about like getting rid of their sideburns.
I think Sub Pop Rock City was one of those ones that was released on 7-inch for Sub Pop, like the 7-inch Club or whatever. I think it was one of those.
Right.
I keep forgetting that like they ended up including that on here too.
Yeah, because that's one of my favorites on here. It's just so fun. Fop, again, like you say, is a cover of the Ohio Players track. I love it. Like down, 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 down. Like hearing that. This is why I love the late 80s and early 90s, because rock bands were really flirting with funk.
Yeah.
If they weren't, even if they weren't like a funk rock or funk metal band, they were still like, hey, let's get some funky fresh jams up in here.
Well, they were like bands even into the 90s would flirt with all sorts of different kinds of music in their cover songs.
Yeah.
Whereas it seemed like nowadays, if a band covers a song, it's just another rock song. And I'm just like, all right, well, that's really boring. Because here's something for you. Is there a cover song made in the past 25 years that you think is any good?
25
Let's make it more 20. Let's just make it this millennium. Can you think of a cover song that hits you the same way that, say, fucking, I don't know, Helpless by Metallica or something like that? Like, just like cover songs, bands would do cover songs and it almost seemed like they made them so much their own that they were equally as good to the original. But now, anytime, even bands I love, anytime anyone covers a song, it's always subpar. Like now.
Yeah, I will say I do like the Megadeth cover of Cold Sweat, but that's more of a guilty pleasure than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, it's fine, but it definitely doesn't hold up to the original song. But it's just a weird thing where it seemed like bands would put cover songs on albums back in the day, and I'd be like, yeah. But now when I see that, I go, you're fucking wasting my time with this shit.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
It's kind of like when I see a Metallica cover on like a metalcore album. It's like, could you have not been a little bit more ambitious than this?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, sure, Battery is a great song and all, but like way back when, when you've got bands like Sacred Reich doing songs like 31 Flavors, come on, like, I know that's not a cover, but make it a bit
that
more
vibe
of a bold,
flirting with different
choice.
Music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I feel like the use of a cover spot should allow for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
if you're going to include one,
just not to derail us, but there's a thought that was in my head.
No, it's cool. This is what the show's all about. Talking about music. So yeah, like we were saying, we got the Fop fucked up heavy dub mix, which is a fucked up heavy dub mix of the previous track.
There you go. You get what the title says.
Yeah. Kingdom of Come, punky one, good fun. And Swallow My Pride is a cover of the song by early grunge act Green River. And I really like it. I also really like the original Green River version. It's just cool to see how like involved everybody was in that scene, because like everybody was friends, pretty much. Yeah. Like everybody had been in every band at some point. And that's what I love about that late 80s Seattle scene going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, before before it broke in the early 90s, there's this cool camaraderie between everyone.
And I think that's why the quote unquote Seattle scene became a thing, because not only were there all these great bands, but it almost seemed like you could tell that they were all friends and they all loved each other's bands, and it just seemed if anything else, it was just the fact that I was like, well, that's cool. I wish I lived somewhere that had that kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's my number 4 with Screaming Life Fop.
Awesome.
Fop me right, don't you fop me wrong.
Ooh, so my number 4, I'm moving up one album in their discography to their debut full-length album, Ultramega OK, from 1988. And this, I feel like it's like everything from this point on, like they make steps up, like they improve things about what they're doing every time. And this is just, it's such a fucking cool album. Just from the beginning of Flower, just the groove of that song, like it's so good. I don't really even know what else to say about it. It's just a fucking great album. It's a more fleshed out sound for what they're doing. And I even like the production of this album better than Screaming Life, even before the remix, because the version that you hear online now is the remixed version, which still sounds good. But I like the original mix of this too. It still sounds really good. But the big thing about Ultramega OK is that there's a big leap in songwriting, like an improvement in what they were doing. And there's still I would say that through Louder Than Love, even through Badmotorfinger, they were so unconventional in what they were doing.
Yeah.
That it's almost like nothing was off limits with just making weird choices in songs, or just having a song be a weird thing on its own. But this just has so much good shit on it. Beyond the Wheel is like one of the best Soundgarden songs. But really, everything is already here for the things that I love about Soundgarden. Ultramega OK immediately lays it all out for you. You got the odd riffs, odd time signatures, odd song structures. Like literally, album number 1, Soundgarden is in a league of their own. And like I said, with the Screaming Life EP, it's like, yeah, of course this band became huge because they were already brilliant at what they were doing. And once again, a good variety of songs. I would say that this is probably the one that I think has the most stuff that kind of fits together out of all their albums. But even then, they don't do it the same way every single time. And even though I know they get a lot better than this is still just such a damn good album that even putting it at number 4, I'm all like, oh really? Can I just put this as a joint? Can we do a joint number 1 for 4 albums? But yeah. So I ended up putting it here number 4 just because I do think that looking at it from a different perspective of other people, like not just looking at it as my preferences, I do know that they did better than this album, but it's still fucking great. So it's my number 4.
Cool. Again, I'm gonna come in with my number 3 being Ultramega OK. I love this one. I feel like it's underrated even by the band, because the band were they called it Ultramega OK because they felt like, yeah, it's all right. They weren't thrilled with how it came out. They weren't amazed with the production of it, but I like it. I like the way it sounds. It too. Yeah, it feels very raw but still fleshed out.
There's something about the Jack and Dino produced grunge albums like, Bleach and stuff like that just the sound, I just love the way they sound. They're like it's not great sounding. Like if I was a producer, I'd be like, oh, I'd probably do some different things here. But I just like it. The character that it adds to the album is fucking great.
It's just that early grunge vibe, isn't it? It's just that cool, dirty, but pretty psyched out kind of vibe as well. Mm-hmm. Flower is one of my all-time favorite Soundgarden riffs and songs ever. The riffs in this are insanely cool. it's got a like bordering on groove metal pretty much with this song. All Your Lies, much more on the chaotic punk side of their sound. Like I love that rundown, like like all of those little rundowns where it's like they didn't have to do that, but they did it because it made it so much better. You know, this is the part where they're taking the piss out of like the metal bands and stuff. They've got an interlude called 665, and then you get Beyond the Wheel, which is easily the heaviest song on the album.
Yeah,
and then
I think Beyond the Wheel on their last tour, I think it's the only song from this album that they played. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking good one.
True.
Like, I remember like hearing it and like seeing how high I could sing, and I impressed myself because I did a pretty convincing rendition of Beyond the Wheel in my bedroom. I'm currently sick, so unfortunately you don't get to hear.
Oh man!
I'll give it a go.
Oh shit! I didn't think this was gonna happen.
Beyond the Wheel. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Wow, that was That
was like Rob Halford doing it, but yeah. 667 is another spooky interlude to bring you back out of Beyond the Whale. I feel like they had this entire like metal section of the record where they were just like, here's our heavy moment. And then you get Mood for Trouble, which is like on the opposite end, which is pretty much like alternative rock with this like weird psychedelic edge to it. But then you get Circle of Power, which is mental. You know, Hiro Yamamoto is doing vocals on this song, going absolutely crazy. And it's like, Circle of Power, big ass Circle of Power coming to get you. You know?
Who was the original bass player? We haven't really talked about Hiro Yamamoto yet, but he was the original bass player up until Louder Than Love, and then I think he left the band after they recorded that album.
Yeah, which like, I bet when Badmotorfinger came out, he might have regretted it. Like he might have thought, shit. Maybe I should have stayed on, but
I don't know if he wasn't happy with Louder Than Love. I don't really know what he wanted. Honestly, it's very confusing to me. But you know, he's his own person.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps he might not have wanted the fame. You know,
maybe.
Or, yeah, he didn't. It's this winding, hypnotic rocker. I love it. It's like so cool. Like all of the riffs on here are badass. Smokestack Lightning is an awesome rendition of the Howlin' Wolf song.
So there you go, like a cover, and the band made it their own thing.
Yeah, like even the riff is different though as well. Like they really did make it their own. That was another one of my. I've got a fun story about this one. I've done my voice in with that Beyond the Wheel one. I'm still a little bit ill from a head cold. But Smokestack Lightning has this crazy bit where I'm sure it's like the highest note he ever hit. Or it's definitely one of them. It's like, wheels go driving slow. Like all of those like really high up ones near the end. And back in college, me and my friends used to have this contest to see if you can sing higher than Chris Cornell on this song, you don't have to pay for pizza. And it was just this fun little game we had where it's like whoever could do the highest note at the time won, so to speak. I always won.
I would I would lose every time.
Oh man, Nazi Driver is one of those more punky ones. It's really dynamic and intense. I love some of their titles as well, like Nazi Driver. Head Injury has an awesome riff and title. Incessant Mace, some serious Black Sabbath vibes on here, but still has that unique Soundgarden flavor. And I'm going to mention this as well. 1 minute of silence is one of those cool moments where you feel like a fly on the wall during the recording process, because it's not silence. Like it's
No.
it's a mic picking something up, and you almost
I love the
it's
fact that
almost
they
like
consider it a cover song, which is fucking hilarious to me.
yeah, yeah. I love the fact as well that you can hear like murmurs and giggles as well, where it's like you almost feel like you're peering through a hole, and you're like, I'm not supposed to be hearing this, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's just like every time I've listened to the album and I've thought about that song, I'm just like, it's literally a minute of nothing. That's a cover of another song that's a minute of nothing, and I'm just like, that's the weirdest idea ever. Of just like what? It's like, but that's a one where they once again they did their own spin on it. They had some little murmuring in the background.
Have you ever seen that famous composition that is, I think it's called like 433, and it's literally just the composer sitting down and doing nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, but it's like it's considered an actual composition. It's scored out and everything, but the idea is that the audience doesn't know what they're in for, and it's like one of the earliest pranks in music ever, where the dude just comes in, sits at a piano, closes it, and doesn't do a thing for 4.5 minutes.
I mean, it's a cool idea, but like that like honestly, like that's, you can only do that one time.
Yeah,
Because you always have somebody like me in the crowd, and as soon as some dude's like, I'm going to do 433, and I just be like, go fuck yourself. It's just like we get it. It's very clever. Now move on.
I think the best part about that, though, is I think they're like secretly intending to elicit that kind of reaction, so that they're just sat there quietly pissing themselves laughing, just up here on a stage.
So the song is going to be called 433 featuring Steven, because it's going to be a new version of it, because I'm going to be yelling at that dude.
Oh man, I'd pay so much money to see that. just that event. But yeah, that is my number 3.
Awesome.
With Ultramega OK.
All right. So now we're at the point now. This one moved to number 3 for me because I realized that I think I give it a lot more credit because I love it so much. And I don't know, listening to it on its own in the sequence of albums for Soundgarden, I had to be really tough with it and go, well, I love it. This one would more likely be my number 2 personally, but I was thinking about things, where they went, what they did, the album as what it is compared to the albums that would come later, and it hurts me to put it at number 3, but I had to go with Louder Than Love for number 3 from 1989, and this is... I absolutely love this album, and to me, it's a big step up from Ultramega OK, which I already think is great.
Yeah,
but fuck, I don't even know what to say about this album. It's just it's got a very 80s production kind of sound. It's Terry Date, which Terry Date would end up also doing like Pantera and other bands like that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he did Pantera. I think Cowboys from Hell was that 1990? So
yeah,
I think that was the
the
year after this. And Louder Than Love's the last album with Hiro Yamamoto on bass. And he apparently left right after they finished recording. So,
I actually have the T-shirt right now.
Oh, yes, there you go. Great. I love that album cover, too. So the first thing I heard off of this was obviously Hands All Over, because the video was played a lot on MTV. But without doing a track by track, because every track on this album to me has something cool you can say about it, but just to single out a couple, Gun. Gun is a song that is absolute definitive proof that Soundgarden were not content approaching songs in an average way. Like this is literally a song that gets progressively faster as the song moves on. And just the fact that they wrote the song, and if they had played it in just one tempo, it still would have been pretty cool because the riff's cool. But just the fact that they decided, you know what, we're going to get faster and faster and faster as the song moves on. And then it eventually gets to the part where it goes, fuck it up! And then it gets like really fast. Yeah. And then obviously it goes back to the beginning. But every time I hear that, I as a musician and a songwriter, I always listen to that and go, I love that they made that choice with this song because they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to do the song that way. And that could be said about so many Soundgarden songs where they make choices that make them unique to Soundgarden and make a song that would already be fucking great even better. But Gun is so fucking cool. And honestly, that's a really good example of the album because the album to me is an album that never lets you get too comfortable. And I mean that in a really good way. Like you're not sure what you're gonna get next with this album. And the other song that I want to point out, which is up there with my favorite Soundgarden songs, is "Loud Love," which is just so great. It's just I don't know what it is. And once again, it goes. This album also goes along with my thing where I'm saying there's not really any choruses. Like even with "Loud Love." You could say him singing "Loud Love" is the chorus, but it still uses the same riff. It's like there's no like they the way they would write songs. They didn't do this thing where now it's time for the chorus. Yeah, it's almost like there's a ending to a chorus that happens, with the hammer on that part, that just goes right back into the rest of the song. And not to mention that great fucking middle section. Yeah, it's just fucking cool. Fun fact though, the music video, around the time that they toured for this album, the bass player was Jason Everman, who was previously in Nirvana. Yeah. And so if you watch the video, it's not Hiro Yamamoto, it's Jason Everman playing bass in that video. Yeah, but anyway,
it's really cool. I gotta say as well, while we're on the topic of the video, I fucking love that video. Yeah. There is just this vibe in that like room that they'd set up and like the clips of like slow-mo car crashes. Mm-hmm. Like there's just something about it, and Chris walking around just posturing like a fucking badass.
Yeah.
Like singing this like so powerful but soulful in delivery. And then when he just barks out "Loud Love" with that riff underneath it. And like everything about that song just fucking nails why I love early Soundgarden. It's just that like it's different to what was going on at the time, but it's still. I mean, it never struck me like they were afraid to do anything, but they also didn't come off like they were trying to. In other words, not be sexy, because a lot of like because like he's still up there with his shirt off and his long flowing Robert Plant hair. Yeah. He's still owning the fact he looks good and he sounds good.
Not just that. The song "Loud Love" to me, it's almost like the rock song equivalent of an animal. An animal like makes a particular noise to let everyone know it's ready to mate.
That's exactly how I would put it.
Like "Loud Love" is literally like if Soundgarden playing. Cool. Yeah, it's like it's almost just like play. If you're really serious about a girl, just dedicate that song to her. Just listen to how. I mean, that's got to get the vibe out there that you're ready for action, because it just feels sexy. Sexual in not the way that like other bands were trying to do it, where they're all like, "I want to get with you" kind of shit. This is literally just like the most primal kind of. I can't even explain what it is, but it just has that feeling of like a mating call in a song, and it's just fucking brilliant. It wins me over, and I don't even like dudes.
I think the best way to put it is that they're being classy about it, and like all of the glam bands were very tongue in cheek, and it's like yeah, we're gonna go shag in a dumpster behind Applebee's. Whereas like with what Soundgarden did on that song, it's like you can imagine Chris is gonna walk off that stage and he could bag any woman he
Yeah.
wanted. Like,
Yeah.
and he didn't even need to just be upfront with it. That song just radiates just that kind of sexual tension, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's a killer song. But you made a good point about they really didn't sound like anybody else, but they also kind of oddly fit in with a lot of other music that was going on in the late 80s. I always
Yeah.
feel like Louder Than Love, why I love it so much is because it's too weird for the metalheads, it's too metal for the weirdos, but it's absolutely perfect for the metal weirdos, which is exactly what I felt like. Because I didn't get into this album in 89, it was a couple years later. But in 1989, I was listening to Faith No More and Living Color and these sort of not necessarily your straightforward, rock bands. But I loved heavy music and rock music. And so I always felt like I was, even though I eventually would consider myself a metalhead, I always felt like I was on the edge of that. Like I was one of those dudes that was, ready to take on something that was more challenging. And I think Louder Than Love is that album. Like the challenging music fans, but that they still wanted to rock. That's what you got with Louder Than Love. I ended up putting it at number 3 though, even though it's better than that. But I think in trying to talk about the influence that the album had, I don't think this one was quite as impactful as the next 2 that I will talk about. And so looking at it from that perspective, I said, okay, this is an amazing record, but it doesn't quite have that reach that the next 2 do. And honestly, this is also the last one that I would consider quote unquote weird. Like even though they always had their odd, like I said before, time signatures, tunings, whatever you want. This is the last one where there are songs on it where I go, they're being kind of weird here. Like they never did a song again like a Big Dumb Sex. That never happened again. You know what I'm saying? Now that they put on an overtly sexual song, but just taking the piss out of that kind of music.
It's almost like Loud Love is what stole the glam guy's girl, and then Big Dumb Sex is just him rubbing it in his face. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, especially with the "fuck you,"
I love that.
Yeah.
So anyway, just to wrap it up really quickly, so I don't go on forever about this album. That's to me, it's up there with their best shit, and I really do love it. But I had to put it at number 3, unfortunately, because it made sense in the grand scheme of things. So that's my number 3, Louder Than Love.
Fair enough. Here's my number 2. And now I want to make it very clear with my list. There are, pretty much the moment you get to like number 4 and number 3, those 2 could change any day of the week. And like, I would like to say for these 2 as well, but I've always had a bit of a thing for what came before it. So my number 2 pick is Badmotorfinger.
Wow. Okay.
So
That didn't give anything away, did it?
Yeah. I can't fucking wait to talk about my number 1 again. But yeah. Rusty Cage. I heard this bad boy on GTA San Andreas, and I love it just as much as the first time I heard it, which is a lot. Yeah. And then I saw the video for Outshined on like Scuzz TV over here. That's like a music channel. I don't know if it's still on TV anymore, but I saw this video on there round about the same time I was getting into grunge. Like you're talking maybe 2012. So yeah, it would have been around that time because my leg was broken in 2012, and I remember because that's same time as I got into grunge.
Listen to last week's. Was it last week's where you told the story about that? Which
I think so. Yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah, so the our top 5 of 1996. Go back and check that out to hear the whole story of Eddie's broken leg.
Our top 5 knee injuries. But yeah, Outshined really cemented my need to go out and buy Badmotorfinger, because I was just there like, okay, Rusty Cage is really cool, but that was the next song that really sold me on getting it, because I was like, oh, fuck, there's 2 songs on here that are this good? That's a good sign, you know, and then I picked it up. And then, you know, obviously, the only 2 tracks I've heard, first 2 tracks, you know, Rusty Cage, Outshined. Then I get Slaves and Bulldozers, and I'm thinking, oh, hello.
Yeah.
Oh, this one is fucking amazing too. And then Jesus Christ Pose happened, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, fuck yeah. And they've slapped me in the face with like 4 different vibes, but they're like very consistently Soundgarden. Then Face Pollution happens, this wild punky hell ride.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get Somewhere, which is this like psychedelic mellowed out track, well placed after 2 absolute ragers. Searching with My Good Eye Closed has such a cool vibe to it. Like, it's heavy in this kind of droney way, but still really catchy, and like it's one of those songs that I always picture being quite airy. Like, every part of it just fades perfectly into the next. And like, it's one of those just really big ones. Room 1,000 Years Wide, like, is this awesomely heavy song. It has a completely crazy avant-garde saxophone solo that just works for some batshit insane reason. Mind Riot is a nice, chill, vibey, psyched out track. I love when they do this. Like, the fact that they can do these really chill moments and then rip my face off with like a song like Drawing Flies, which is this sleazy, cool hard rocker. Holy Water is suitably heavy with that awesome, like, odd breakdown section. Yeah, like those little stabs. Like, everything on this record is extremely interesting. And then finally you get New Damage, which closes out the record in like full-on sludgy mode. And I'm now realizing how much I adore Soundgarden as a band, because like, especially my top 2 picks, my God, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just so fucking good.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
I'm immediately following this. I'm probably just going to put one on after the other. I might need a late evening Soundgarden binge. I like that. But yeah. Cool.
Well,
to Badmotorfinger.
Yeah,
I like that you let me just gush over this one.
That's fine. You can, because we're gonna have a little bit of a break, because I'm not talking about Badmotorfinger yet. My number 2 is Superunknown from 1994. And this switched places with Louder Than Love the more that I kind of thought about it, because this is the biggest Soundgarden album.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it, as I do with many bands' discographies, because this is a progression from what they did before. And honestly, if they had ended here, this would be a pretty fucking damn good ending, because the problem is with Down on the Upside is that they continued down a path where they did give you something that was slightly different, but not exciting enough. Whereas in this case, with Superunknown, it's a more polished and more direct version of Soundgarden, but still maintaining all of their little oddities that make them sound like no other fucking band.
Yeah.
But they added in other elements of these really catchy, melodic, beautiful songs in this album. And it's weird, because it's listening to it like right after Badmotorfinger, you notice that there are a lot of moments that are lighter, But there are moments on this album that I think are heavier than anything that they had ever done. Like there's a really good balance there, because there's some heavy shit on this record that people don't talk about that much.
Yeah, it's almost like it's got like the extremes of all of their sounds, but they'd kind of condensed the weirdness down a little bit. So it's like, it's really accessible, but it also has like heavy as shit stuff on it. Like,
yeah. So there are a couple tracks that I think are not as strong on this album, but what makes this album so good is the strong ones are really fucking strong. Like ridiculously strong. And honestly, I like the production of this album too. It has a very full sound to it. But really, like when it comes to the big hits, you can't fuck with Black Hole Sun and The Day I Tried to Live. We already talked about those two, just absolute classic Soundgarden songs. But there are some hidden gems in there. We already talked about Limo Wreck. Limo Wreck's one of my favorite Soundgarden songs. But another one that isn't quite as obvious because it's a little bit odd that I love is Head Down. Head Down has this vibe, and I don't know what it is about it. It's a song that it doesn't actually really ever go anywhere else than the one kind of basic thing that it's doing, but it's so cool, and it creates such a great vibe that it could be like a 10-minute song, and I would be absolutely down for that because it creates this great vibe. And there's so much good shit. So the first song that I heard on this album was Spoon Man, because that was the first video. But I'm sure you probably already know this, but Spoon Man, the riff for Spoon Man was previously in the movie Singles.
Yeah.
Like during a little sort of in between two scenes part, you hear the riff for what would become Spoon Man like 3 years later or 2 years later.
I remember watching Singles and thinking, wait, what? Like when I heard the riff, I was like, that's not out yet, you know?
Yeah. And not only that, you get Chris Cornell in the movie.
Yeah.
Which I think we joked about before, how it's funny how he just shows up like he's a fan of car stereos. Like he's nowhere in the movie. And then once Matt Dillon's like, I got a new car stereo, Chris Cornell's like, oh, I'm into this. Let me check out this car stereo. But anyway, so honestly, I really do think that if Superunknown was a few songs shorter, because it is a little bit too long in my opinion, this could have a really good case for being the number one Soundgarden album because it's that good. But even as it is now, it's still a fantastic album. And I had to put it at number 2 just because this is out of all of their albums, like we talked about before, this seems to be the one that influenced so many fucking bands.
Yeah.
And every year you hear new bands that are trying to do things like they did on Superunknown, and they can't do it just because, like I said earlier, there is no band like Soundgarden. There are bands that are similar, but no band like Soundgarden, and any band that's trying it can't do it as good. I really do think it's a void that if it does get filled with a band, I'll be dead. I don't think there's ever going to be a band that comes around where I go, this makes me happy, not because we don't have Soundgarden anymore. No, that's not it. It's never going to be filled. But Superunknown was that album that I think really started to bring out these bands that were like, we want to do that, shit like that. Anyway, but yeah, that's my number 2. Superunknown.
Cool. So we get to gush about my number 1.
I'm okay with doing this because I wanted to talk about this album more.
Okay, that was my last sip of water. I've managed to conserve it because got kind of a throaty thing going on here. I'm a little hoarse, but
you look a human to me. I mean, I'm a dad. Okay, let me have my jokes.
I've just got this like image right now of like a freeze frame of me and you, and like Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News starts playing, and the credits roll, and it says Will began a new life as a pony at a petting zoo.
That is an odd combination of things in your brain. It's interesting how your brain works.
Yeah,
Your brain is like a Soundgarden song. It doesn't. All these elements are put together that shouldn't work, and they do.
I wish I could come up with like more skit ideas that quickly. But it's fucking louder than love time.
Woo!
So this is one of their heaviest, if not the heaviest, of their records, with the emphasis on that kind of production and that aspect of their sound. I'm just gonna jump right in. Ugly Truth is 5.5 minutes of pure vibe, and I love it. And it doesn't feel like an opening track.
No, it doesn't.
All. But like it, in a way, it also makes sense because it's like you said, this is metal for the weirdos. You know, in a way.
But really, like if you think about it, like what song should have started the album? I can't think of, just looking at them. I'm like, I don't know what would have been the appropriate beginning. Like none of these songs feel like you're already in the middle of a great album when it starts, you know?
I feel like Loud Love could have opened it with the way it starts, but
you're probably right.
But I like where it is on the album. I like looking forward to it.
That'd be blowing its load very quickly, and I meant that in a sexual way.
I was literally about to say that. Oh man, like Hands All Over. I got a fun little story about Hands All Over. I made a music video for this song for a media project back in high school.
I've seen it.
I was gonna say you can find it on my second channel, Eddie Sparxx 2. If anyone wants to
Electric
watch,
Boogaloo.
if anyone wants to watch a 16-year-old me, my friend, and my uncle in a music video of our fictional band Alice in Thunderland to promote our song Hands All Over. But yeah, it's a really cool song. Also, we nearly burned down the shed because one of the sheets caught fire from one of the lights, and it's funny. I went to the shop like just a few doors up, and I came back down the road and realized that there was smoke coming out of the roof, and I thought, oh shit, no. And it smelled really weird because these were like rags that had paint and oil and shit in them because they were in like this shed. And I thought, oh God, don't tell me I'm burning down my grandparents' house.
It just sucks that didn't happen during the filming of the video, because I'd have been like, just keep rolling. This is going to be gold for this video. You know, let it burn.
It's funny. There's a certain point where you can see this really bright light wrapped in a sheet, and it's like, how did I not foresee this happening at all? Yeah. Oh, Gun is heavy as fuck. Like, I love the fact again that it builds up. But it's
also, can you even figure out what timing that song is in? It still baffles me to this day. He's counting.
I don't know, 11 or something. It wouldn't fucking surprise me.
It's an 11 time.
Yeah. It probably isn't.
It's in 11D time.
11D. Oh man, like I feel the fact that it starts so slowly and then builds up, has that crazy thrashy bit where like there's even double kick in that if you hear like like underneath it. But like the fact it like falls apart completely and then bow no, like that makes
comes
it
right back around.
Hit so hard, like it's insane. Power Trip is a Sabbathy, bluesy, grunged out, vibey one. Like I don't think there's a single song on here that doesn't have a killer riff. This is a riff album. Like if you like riffs, there is absolutely no fucking reason to not own this because it's incredible for that. Get on the Snake. See, this one feels not in style remotely, but like Get on the Snake, I could easily see that as a Whitesnake song. Like, it's funny.
Get on the Snake.
Yeah, there's like kind of these like little jabs at like, I don't know what it is. There's like a weird tongue in cheek but being classy about it at the same time vibe. And it's got a really cool like odd time riff. Like a lot of the stuff on here is like really groovy but weird and jerky at the same time. But that dong 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 dong, like it changes like the accents in the riff. Full on Kevin's mom, pretty intense. Like,
see what I'm saying? They also never did a song like that again.
Yeah, like, but this is another one of those ones where you said earlier they have like at least one fast punky one.
Yeah,
this is this one on this album. Loud Love is full on big dick energy. I Awake is scarily heavy. Like, that one is so doomy and crushing when it kicks in. And I remember, like, right at the start of this year, like, coming off of the hellscape that was 2020, I remember I put my iPod on shuffle. It was on, like, the grunge grunge genre, and I put it on shuffle. And what's the first thing I hear on, like, the first day of 2020? Woke up depressed. I left for work, and it was like, I'm literally doing this right now. Stop narrating my life, Chris. No Wrong, No Right, spooky and heavy, but like a bit more upbeat. Uncovered always struck me weird. It's got this like weirdly light, kind of windy, psyched out feel to it, but it's still got that like riff in there. As you know, as a glam fan, I know this is poking fun at it, but Big Dumb Sex is kind of like one of my favorites. Like, like I love the fact that they did their own unique take on it, did it well, and still managed to make it just this middle finger to like what they thought was stupid at the time. But like, didn't Guns N' Roses also cover it like on the Spaghetti Incident? Like, there's a little bit where he's like, "Hey,
yeah." I'm not sure what song it's on, but they put a bit of it in there.
Yeah, oh, man. And then finally you get full on reprise. And it's a nice little outro track, and it's another example of one of those, hey, glad you enjoyed the album. Now go about your day.
I like, as an ending, I like that. It feels like an appropriate ending to the album.
I love albums that have like a credit sequence. Like for me, I love how Diver Down, like by Van Halen, closes out with Happy Trails.
Yeah.
To you until we meet again. But I fucking love this album. Louder Than Love and Badmotorfinger, I can listen like one straight after the other and have a great time the entire time. Yep, that is my number one.
And we're going to talk about them back to back too. I think that we didn't match up exactly on any album in this ranking. We were right next to each other at times.
I feel like that's the thing with like a Soundgarden ranking, is like certain placings could change at any day of the week. But like, I'm still very set on my number one. Like I followed my heart on this one because I was like, yeah, Badmotorfinger is also like really well known and also in my kind of wheelhouse compared to Superunknown, but goddamn, Louder Than Love. Like that one for me. I'm done gushing. You gush on yours.
Well, I am very secure in my number one as well. There was no discussion with myself of whether or not Badmotorfinger would be my number one Soundgarden album. It is, to me, it is a perfect album. There is literally no bad song on this album, and everything is so well done. And I think it's pretty long too for an album that I would consider perfect, because I do think it's almost an hour long. It's like 57 minutes long.
It doesn't feel it though. Like that's the thing.
No, it does not. So this is the first album with Ben Shepherd on bass, and once again they have Terry Date producing. Although I do think that the production's a little bit improved here, but it is still a little bit. It's not beefy enough for me, because I think that's a thing that Superunknown has, is it has a beefier production, but it doesn't matter because at this point Badmotorfinger sounds how it sounds, and I love everything about it. Once again, though, this is a huge leap in songwriting and arrangements. This is like a more mature and focused and heavier Soundgarden. It's like it feels like the most sort of confident album that they put out. Like they knew they were badass at this point, and then made Badmotorfinger. And we already went through a lot of the tracks, but Outshined is where my story with Soundgarden really begins, because it was that kind of song where you saw the music video and the song, and I just went like, this is like one of the best things I've ever heard. And I still think it's not only one of their best songs, but one of the best songs ever. And I just like this album because it's probably the most metal, if you're going to call any of their albums metal. But it's still really odd. It still has the odd tunings and the odd time signatures. But the big thing about this one for me, from Louder Than Love, not just Louder Than Love, but even Ultramega OK, the lyrics seem like they got better. Like sometimes the lyrics on earlier Soundgarden, I'm a little like, did he rush these a little bit? Because all of a sudden he went from being a person where I don't think the lyrics were necessarily that big of a thing to Badmotorfinger. I love the lyrics on this album. Yeah. And maybe he just took more time writing them, or he just decided to try something new and he just also kicked ass at that as well. I don't know. But this was an album that came out the same day as Nirvana's Nevermind and Red Hot Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magik. So that was a fucking good day. But because of those two albums, I didn't hear this album until several months later. I got really into, I got Blood Sugar Sex Magik first because I was already a Chili Peppers fan. And then once I saw It Smells Like Teen Spirit, I got Nevermind, and I lived with that album for months and months. And then, when I came out of that, all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, this Soundgarden thing. And this is the reason why I think this is their best album, is because it's got you get both kinds of albums here. You get one that has these immediate badass things that are in your face and they're badass. But then there's other things that are good, but it's almost like they reveal themselves to you with future listens. It's almost like your favorite songs will change as time goes on, because you'll be like, oh man, now these songs are standing out. Like every song on this album to me stands out at some point when you're listening to it. And I just, it's perfect. There's absolutely no bad song on it. No weak track. No track that I wouldn't call fucking amazing. It's literally that's all it is amazing shit all the way through. And it still is one today that I listen to, and especially as a songwriter and a guitar player, I listen to it and I'm like, man, these guys had ideas that nobody else had. And I still don't know where that kind of shit comes from. And I know it's got to be that grouping of musicians, because I think that not only did they work really well together, but I think they all challenged each other, I guess, and brought the best out of each other. But just Soundgarden at this point in their career, I even last night I watched a whole bunch of Chris Cornell related videos, just kind of getting in the mood to do this episode. And you watch footage of them on the tour for Badmotorfinger, and one of my favorite things is just watching how they move to the music, because like my favorite is that when you get to the end of Rusty Cage, when it slows down, Ben Shepherd like almost gets down on his knees playing his guitar so fucking low. It's like his body is going towards where the notes are going. Like and it's just great to just see those guys just feeling this fucking music that they made. And it's it's just so great. They were just such a great band. Since I'm talking about Badmotorfinger, before I wrap this up, I want to talk about my favorite non-album Soundgarden song, which came from the recording session of Badmotorfinger, but wasn't released till way later. My favorite unreleased song by them was Black Rain, which came out on the Telephantasm compilation that came out, I think, in like 2009 or 2010, I think.
Which coincided with how I heard Black Rain, which is on the Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock set list. And that was put on there.
Yeah, and Black Rain was mostly recorded during the Badmotorfinger sessions, but they weren't happy with it. And apparently the only thing that was really changed was Chris Cornell re-recorded the chorus vocals, which I'm assuming that just means the fly on Black Rain. I think that part, because that's the only part where it sounds like a different Chris Cornell than the rest of it. But everything about that song, from the fucking riff to Chris Cornell's delivery, which from everything I've read, that was just a demo vocal, and he fucking nails it. And it's just such a fucking amazing song that never gets old to me. Like, I remember when it came out in 2010 that I kept listening to it over and over again. I'm all like, this is like the Soundgarden that I love, this era of Soundgarden. And it's one of those things it's so great. A song that they didn't intend to really put out and they eventually did, is that good. Like, that's how great of a band Soundgarden is to me. But, so my number one is Badmotorfinger. I think honestly, maybe I think now is the time, because I think we've probably broken 2 hours with this episode. So, but even I don't want to rush out of here, because I really do think that since we're talking about Soundgarden, maybe we should take a few minutes and talk about Chris Cornell. Especially last night when I was watching a lot of Chris Cornell stuff, because I'm a fan of Chris Cornell, but I don't think as much as you are. But I loved Soundgarden, but after that, I wasn't really that interested in anything that Chris Cornell did. I remember his first solo album came out, and I had it, and I thought it was pretty good, but it didn't do it for me. At that point, I had already, Down on the Upside had already come out, and I was like, it's not that great to me. And then so it was just one of those things where that happened, and then Audioslave came out, which was a thing that should have been great, but to me, it was the same thing where something didn't feel right with Audioslave. Like, it felt like the sum of its parts was greater than the actual product that it ended up putting out. I don't know how you feel about Audioslave.
I'd say like I love the hits from Audioslave at this time, but like deep cuts wise, the only thing I can think of is Gasoline.
Yeah, it's to me, but I understand that that's a band that was probably important to a lot of people that were younger. But at that point, I had moved on, and I, because I love Badmotorfinger era Soundgarden, I just wanted more. And even being a Rage Against the Machine fan, I wanted Audioslave to be better. But the one thing that I did do last night that I hadn't done in a while was I went and watched the music videos from his solo album called Scream, which is the one where he got together with Timbaland and did a pop album. Yeah. And I have to say this, that album got a raw deal. It's weird to see, especially in the music videos, to see Chris Cornell in this environment doing these songs, because it's not like he wrote Chris Cornell type songs and they made them pop songs. His mentality was in the pop world. Like, even in the words he wrote, the melodies he sang, they went well with the music. Like, it's, when it comes to that kind of music, have you heard Scream? Have you not heard that album?
I actually, considering the fact that, I say he's my favorite vocalist, like, I liked him in Audioslave, and I love, the stuff he did in Soundgarden, but I've never actually done like a deep dive of his solo stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing that comes to mind that I'm familiar with his solo stuff is the song he did for Casino Royale.
Oh,
the James Bond film.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I started watching the Scream stuff and realizing that I actually enjoy it. And I feel like it's kind of shitty that it didn't do better for him. But it started to get me thinking, though, because obviously Chris Cornell committed suicide, like you said, about 4 years ago. Yeah. And I started kind of going down a wormhole of thinking about him, why he would have done that, and my perception of him. Because, to be honest, I started to see weird things in Chris Cornell when Audioslave started. I remember seeing footage when they first that band first kind of was premiering. They did a performance where I think they were on the edge of a building overlooking like some part of New York, like on MTV, and they're playing Cochise, I think is this the song at the time. And I just remember looking at Chris Cornell and being like, he looks like he doesn't want to be there. Like the big rock star kind of vibe thing was gone.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like he didn't really want to make eye contact. And it was like something was really restrained in him. And this is back in 2000 and early 2000s. I don't know what year that was that first came out. And then over the years, I would see some performances of him, and then when Soundgarden back together, I would see some performances where I go, there's Chris Cornell. And then I would see another one where I go, something is wrong with him. Like it seemed like something was wrong with him on stage. There's a concert they did where I think it was broadcast on like Apple TV, or I think it was before Apple TV. It was like on iTunes or whatever, where they did a special performance and it was broadcast on that. And I just remember seeing him and like he would barely move, and he just seemed like he was kind of not really giving it his all when he was singing. And so I started thinking about all these things, and then I started to think about the album Scream, where he literally tried to do something different and people just shit on it. And I'm just like, was he already struggling with his place in the musical world? Like the unfortunate part about the tragedy of him dying is that we don't get to go interview him afterwards and be like, hey, can you let us know why? That's the thing. And so here's the thing that I feel is so significant about him is that he's not somebody who's like a big influence over me as a musician, but his death is the one that bothers me the most because he was so perfect as a rock musician. Like his voice, his look, the music he made, he was like, if I was going to say who's the perfect like rock and roll member to you, it wouldn't be like, as much as I love like James Hetfield, because James Hetfield looks kind of weird. He's got a weird face. But Chris Cornell was the package. And so the fact that that guy wasn't happy, like that blows my mind. And I know that success and good looks, that doesn't bring you happiness. I understand that. But it makes me even more so just want to understand it. And I wish I could ask him and be like, can you just let everybody know? Because a lot of people love you. Can you let everybody know what happened? Because was it accidental? Was it, was he on some drugs and didn't know what he was doing? Or had this been a thing that had been building and building and building, and then one night after a show just went, fuck it, I'm out. And it just bothers me because I want to know why. I know I'm rambling on, but you can say a few words about how you feel about it.
I think, it does. It's one of those deaths. It was the first time a, so-called celebrity death actually, kind of really affected me. Because I remember, I think that's the only time where someone's died and I was actually pretty teary about it. Like I remember sitting on the bus on the way home thinking like, God, why the fuck did I decide on this day to listen to Say Hello to Heaven in public?
Oh,
You know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I was there like, oh man, why did you do this to yourself? But like, I was broken from it. You know, I remember thinking, shit, like of all the people, that's the thing. I didn't expect Chris Cornell of all
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know that he'd had struggles with alcohol in the past, but like with regards to, you know, when someone just puts out this immortal vibe,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
He really did. He did.
You know, that's what I got from him. And then I found out about it pretty brutally as well, because I was sat on the floor just minding my own business. I wasn't scrolling through any social media feeds or anything. I was just sat with my friends. All of a sudden, my friend comes around the corner from another class. He says, "Oh my God." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Chris Cornell died." I was like, "Shut the fuck up. He's dead." Yeah. And he was like, "No, I'm serious." I had to come away for a moment. I was like, what the fuck? You know, I actually thought for a minute, was it like some kind of tragic accident? And then when he told me it was suicide, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, again, like I say, it's that kind of immortal vibe that you just put across.
It
but
was a shocker. Like I like that it's a weird difference, because like obviously people that obviously like when I was young, I was really influenced by Kurt Cobain, but when he died, it almost seemed like to make sense to me. Like it's a tragedy,
Yeah.
but I understand it. And then you go to like I think the only musician I ever actually cried when he died was recently when Neil Peart died. That hit me really hard. I don't know why, but it really did. But when Chris Cornell died, it was almost like I was in shock. I remember like walking that day. I had to go catch a bus, and I remember walking to the bus stop and just like, usually I put on some headphones and listen to some music or something, but I walked like in silence because I'm just like, I don't understand this. Like it was the most shocking death to me that, you know, for the suicide. Obviously people have died in accidents, and that's shocking as it is, but just something about him. It just, you know, it just, I don't know. I just wish that we had some kind of an answer, but we don't. But we do have like a whole lot of fucking music, and it's good that you brought up, you know, Say Hello to Heaven, because Temple of the Dog is another amazing album that he was involved in, and then they got to do a little wrap up of that too. Like they did that Temple of the Dog series of shows. I don't know if it was just one show or several shows where they got everybody together.
Yeah, it's kind of like everything. It's almost like it almost feels in like kind of a morbid way, like he was kind of tying up loose ends.
Yeah,
like
he made another Soundgarden album, brought everybody back together. You know, they were friends again. Yeah,
it like, because I remember seeing photos of the last show, and you can kind of see this pained look on his face. I know this is like kind of a downer, but like...
It's okay. I just think it's important to talk about with somebody like Chris Cornell.
Yeah, like I could see something in his eyes in the photos of that last gig, where I'm thinking, this dude is on stage in front of all these people singing original material that people worldwide adore. And this dude's got like tears in his eyes. He doesn't know why he's not happy or something.
And it's weird too, because if you watch, and I mean, honestly, like I said, I'd seen that in performances from him for years. But the odd thing about it, even in the very last performance, because you can see video of it online, in certain songs, you'll see him come out of the funk. And all of a sudden, like when they did Jesus Christ Posed, he got way more animated and seemed, you know, a little bit more into it. But then another song would happen, and it's like everything just went back into him again. And it's you're seeing his emotional struggles in concert. And it just sucks because I know that it's a mental health issue, and those are the kind of things that you cannot explain. You know, if you've if you've never suffered with depression or anxiety or any of those kind of things, there's no way anyone can really explain it to you. And not only that, everyone's experience seems to be pretty unique, especially when you're dealing with a fucking rock star dealing with these issues. And so it's just weird because you see him going through that on stage. And, at the time I just looked at it and, when I would see it before and I'd be like, well, maybe he's not happy. That's, it sucks. Maybe he doesn't want to do music, maybe hopefully he goes home to his family and he's happy or whatever. But I mean, apparently that wasn't even enough. But so it's not to harp on the sadness here, but it is. I feel like because this is the the only time this is really I can't imagine us doing an Audio Slave Cranked and Ranked just because it would just be what do they do 3 albums in Audio Slave
3
and
3 albums.
It would be a lot of us going this is good but not great, and so I don't think it would be very interesting. But
I am quite interested in doing like an episode where we talk about some of the early grunge albums that were like one-off projects and stuff.
Oh yeah,
that could be fun.
Yeah, I agree.
But with like your Mother Love Bone, your Green River, your obviously Temple of the Dog, could be a cool one to do.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, so yeah, we can wrap up Soundgarden. It's just one of those things where if you really do, dig into all the stuff that Chris Cornell did, you can't help but think about like what he was going through and how it all ended. But just getting back onto like actually Soundgarden itself, the run of Soundgarden, like we said, it's great that they got back together and we got another album out of them, and their story has a nice ending. And we've said this several times, but there is no bad Soundgarden album. And they're one of those bands that I really do think their influence is gonna last longer than a lot of bands of that era. I really do think that even Pearl Jam, as much as people are fanatical about Pearl Jam, I think give us a few hundred years. I don't think people will talk about Pearl Jam very much, but I do think they will still be talking about Soundgarden because I really think that they had that special combination of things where they appealed to so many different people. In different ways. Like I said, there are people like Down on the Upside's an important album and they're a fan of that. But, I love Badmotorfinger and it's interesting.
Yeah. I always thought that Soundgarden was the musicians grunge band. Like the musicians.
Out of all of the big 4 quote unquote of grunge, I would say, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But yeah, cool. We've, Is this a record breaker? Is this our longest episode?
No, I'm pretty sure we've done longer than this. It's been a while though. It's been a while since we had a well over 2-hour episode, but it was worth it. Like I said, I think this band deserves a lot more time. And obviously for those of you out there who are listening, Peanut Butter Platypus, thank you for sticking around. This long, and hopefully you're not all depressed out there now, because but
I think it's good that I think it's important to just shine a light on mental health.
Yeah, agreed.
And if one of your boys or girls out there is even just check in on them, see how they're doing.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that also don't expect that you know everything about people because you don't. But yeah, I agree. That's our little PSA. Go make sure that you're there. That to lend an ear to somebody if they need it or something like that. But yeah, Soundgarden, amazing band. And we ranked them. And so now we've only got one more. Eventually we're gonna have to hit Pearl Jam, but I think we'll give ourselves a little bit of time to hit Pearl Jam. But that's it. Cool. All right, bye. No, I'm kidding. So that's it for this episode of Cranked and Ranked. Thank you for joining us. I believe, if I remember right, without giving anything away, I believe next time we're going to throw something a little bit different at you, artist-wise. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yep. And don't worry. The Rock is not going away.
Don't give him that big of a hint. Next time we're going to hit you with something a little different, mostly because I think that it'll keep this podcast more interesting if we don't just stick to alternative metal, alternative rock, metal, and 80s rock. Like I feel like if we have to branch out from there, but not too much.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely not. So yeah, we'll be back next time with something a little bit different, but hopefully you enjoy it. But once again, thank you very much for listening to Cranked and Ranked. And as usual, I'm going to hand it over to Eddie to take us out.
Light on down!